Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here, and as all 90s kids know, Sega does what Nintendo don't. So while Mario and Luigi are still waiting for their animated debut later this year, Sonic the Hedgehog is already racing back into theaters for his second movie. I've seen it, so let's talk about it. So kind of fitting, considering what this movie is about, that we have a sequel, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, coming just 2 years after the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie, which is crazy fast for how these animated movies, typically go. I was maybe in somewhat of the minority. I did not like the original Sonic the Hedgehog from 2020. By the time the end credits rolled for that movie, I was ready to declare the console wars once again over. I found that movie is a chore to get through. Everything in that movie moved fast except for the runtime. I was ready to get out of the theater. But this movie looked a little more interesting to me. It seemed like they were kind of bringing in some other characters from the video games. And hey, there's precedent. Second Sonic the Hedgehog video game improved on the original Sonic game. So I was hoping that the movie franchise would do similar. And I'm excited or, relieved maybe that it does. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, make no mistake, this is not a great movie. This is not some kind of classic. This is not, a super enjoyable, just left the theater just so excited for Sonic the Hedgehog 2. But it is a vast improvement over the original Sonic the Hedgehog. And it seems that this movie, kind of like the original, made headlines for kind of taking fan feedback and kind of redesigning the Sonic character to look more like the video game, kind of the cute, big-eyed, and not whatever kind of nightmarish, horrible looking rodent thing that they originally had in the first trailer. So they're open to, I think, to hearing what the audience wants. And it seems like this movie, in a lot of ways, addresses some of the issues that I had with the original. And the biggest issue I had with that original movie was just the humans. No one goes to a Sonic the Hedgehog movie wanting to see a bunch of boring humans go through a midlife crisis and work through family drama. Like this, everything about those characters was boring. Didn't care about any of them. I just wanted Sonic, and it seemed like most of the movie was just sort of humans with a bit of Sonic thrown in. This movie, it kind of addresses that. There's a scene that almost seems intentional, where Sonic kind of opens a portal and sends the human characters off to Hawaii. Just sort of sidelines them. Unfortunately, they do return, and every time they're in the movie, things kind of come screeching to a halt. It seems like they kind of need, they sort of have to have them in there just because they were in the original, but they don't have anything to do that is relevant to this story. But they are definitely sidelined compared to the first one, which was a very welcome change. Kind of the exception to the human characters is Jim Carrey. His villainous role, Dr. Robotnik, in the first one. Again, I was maybe in the minority where I just didn't enjoy his performance in the first one. I found him almost too reserved than I expect from Jim Carrey. And even his humor, I found it more just sort of him being a jerk and saying mean things to characters rather than just sort of being crazy and funny and saying weird stuff. But this movie is they take off the chains, they let him loose. This is 100% Jim Carrey movie, or performance at least, and it's kind of reminiscent maybe of the Grinch. He is almost like a stereotypical homage to himself. He is very much in his element, and he's funny. He's crazy. He's a little more over the top and cartoonish in his portrayal, and just sort of saying weird stuff and doing all his weird facial expressions. And he is funny in this. He hams it up every scene. They give him a lot to do, and he definitely compared to all the other boring human characters, he is definitely one that you don't mind when he is on screen. But this is not a human movie. This is a Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and the main draw to this movie is Sonic the Hedgehog. And he's fun. He's an endearing kind of hyper speedster, childish character. I found him likable in the first movie. He's the same in this movie. And kind of the appeal and what I think helps elevate this movie to being a little more interesting is that he has more animated animal characters in this one. Tails, kind of the double-tailed yellow fox character from the second video game makes his debut, which, side note, I always thought Tails was a girl. Turns out he's a boy, so you learn something new. But so Tails is in it, and then Knuckles, kind of the red, kind of meathead, just pounding kind kind of reminded me a lot of like Drax from the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, just very kind of literal and just tough warrior that isn't necessarily, firing on all cylinders up in the brain. So those two new characters in this movie, and they're good. You kind of see, it shows like the potential of what like a Sonic movie would be like without human characters, because whenever the animated kind of characters are on screen, it's good. They interact, interesting. It becomes a very different movie than when you're trying to there's some weird side plot in this with like humans and a wedding and police, and it sort of shows what these movies could be. So I think having those characters, especially for kids and stuff, are gonna enjoy it a lot more. Just being able to embrace these kind of new animated characters. But like I said, this is not necessarily it has improved on the original, but it's not necessarily a great movie. There's still definitely flaws and issues with it. One of my biggest, I guess, problems with this is just that it's very much like a speed run. Like this movie doesn't. It's more akin to like a Sonic the Hedgehog like video game level rather than like a classic story arc with a climax and building tension and all that stuff. Like this movie just sort of races from one point to the other. It never stops kind of long enough to for any scene to have much of an impression or even to tie together. Like there's no real build. It's more just sort of a collection of these sort of entertaining, crazy scenes, and they move on to the next one. Like there's a scene where Tails and Sonic are all of a sudden end up in this like tavern out in like the mountains, and they're doing this like dance battle, and it's it's whatever, it's entertaining, but then they move on and there's no relevance to the that scene had no relevance. They didn't learn anything, they didn't grow. And later there's a scene where they're kind of trapped in imprisoned in like a hotel by these police officers, and they break out and then they rush off to the next thing, and nothing about that whole like set piece and stuff has any relevance to the plot. It's just sort of like, hey, here's a scene. Now we're at the end. So that there just isn't a whole lot of I guess kind of unity to this story. I think on their own the scenes are entertaining enough, but definitely it does seem like a very kind of like the writers were just as hyper and high on caffeine as Sonic was, just throwing it all together. And the other thing that kind of rubbed me a bit the wrong way is that, Sega always kind of have this reputation for being like the edgy and the cool console compared to like the more straight-laced, Nintendo, which is more for kids. And, Sega had like the violent video games. And you can kind of see that this movie tries to sort of capture some of that. It's filled with all these like pop culture, references and stuff, but like, most of the references already feel dated, and like it comes across more like some old boomer trying to like speak hip like Gen Z language, and hey, here's something that was cool when I was a kid, and they're like, what, like Limp Bizkit references and stuff. And so I don't know, that's the problem with doing these like pop culture relevant movies, is they don't stay relevant for very long. And there's this not over the top, but there is to me there's no reason for like a character in an animated film to be declaring and like yelling out like a swear word or something. Like those sort of things are only seem to be in there just because it's Sega and it's a little more mature, and they say naughty words, and it's not over the top, but maybe they sort of fully embrace sort of that family vibe and trying so hard to be like kind of cool and edgy and kind of like the console was back in the day. As far as content, kind of on the surface to consider, really not a whole lot. Violence, there's no violence. Characters get punched and Sonic gets bloody, and but this is not a violent movie. Characters don't die and stuff, and he's an animated blue hedgehog, so I don't have any problem with that. Sexuality, there's sort of kind of a innuendo joke thing that really is not not offensive in any way. But really, other than that, there's no sexuality or anything in this movie. Language, like I mentioned earlier, there's the odd, like what the, one character, what the hell, yells a swear word, which is completely unnecessary. For the most part, the profanity in this movie is very, like the placeholder swears, like holy crap or holy sherbert, or they say these things that are like kind of their swears, and like you kind of know what word your mind can fill them in, and I'm sure kids will fill them in. They know what they're saying. What the heck? Those sort of words, and there's a lot of that in this movie. But not a whole lot of actual, spoken, verbalized, profanity. But overall, just not a whole lot of kind of on the surface stuff to be concerned about. As far as kind of deeper themes beneath the surface, this movie is not trying to deal with deeper themes. This movie is trying to go fast and move on to story things and have entertaining scenes. And, it's sort of like half-heartedly will try and set up like kind of what the themes and moral of the story is, but it can never like stand still long enough to actually like, develop that, or, they more just have characters like say it and there's like no justification for it. So there's not a ton of like, moral lessons or things in the Sonic movie. But I do think one of the themes that the film is trying to kind of to get at, and I think of all the sort of messages, the one that is the most successful is this sort of the unity of the team, the need for the need to have a crew. The first Sonic the Hedgehog movie was Sonic, and they kind of played up the fact that he's this like literal alien from a different world, and he's he's the only one like him. And the first movie had him playing baseball with himself, on the field and running all the positions, and kind of highlighting the fact that like he needs a crew. He needs to find his place, and he hasn't. And this movie is kind of the answer to that. It kind of continues that theme with with Tails and the Knuckles and some of these other kind of from his world characters. And the verse that kind of came to mind, 1 Corinthians 12. Where it just talks about, the body of Christ, how, the church is one body in many parts. And that's kind of the message that the film kind of gets into, that, Sonic can do a lot of things. He's fast, but he can't do everything. There's things that he, there's challenges and things that are beyond his ability, where just running fast can't fix it. And you kind of see that metaphor of like the church and the body with the animated characters, where Tails is sort of the real smart one that isn't as fast and not strong, but can come up with gadgets and think through situations. And Knuckles is not as fast and really not very smart, but he has kind of this brute strength, and he has courage, and he can fight. And especially kind of at the end when these characters are coming together, you just sort of see them kind of working as a unit where everyone has their role. And so I definitely think this is not a film that's necessarily preaching that. It does, but it does make that kind of an obvious theme. And I think as Christians, there's and even watching it with kids, it definitely works as sort of a metaphor for that. So in the end, I like this movie. I wasn't, if I hated the first one, this one, it was a welcome kind of, improvement on that. It's not necessarily a movie that I'm going to want to watch again, or I don't know if I'm like itching for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, unless they promise that they're going to like Sonic's world and they're leaving all the humans behind. Then maybe I'll be on board for it. But I think for what it is, it's fine. It's not a deep movie. It's not a profound movie. It's not even all that, I don't think, a very well made movie. But I think it is an entertaining movie, or at least it can be, and it kind of functions almost like a Sonic the Hedgehog video game, where there's not a whole lot of meaningful story or anything. It's just, hey, things are moving fast. Things are crazy. You just sort of plug in, enjoy a couple hours, and move on with your life. And that's kind of what this film is. If you want to, a film that's going to be, real impactful or memorable, look elsewhere. But if you just want a film that can kind of entertain you, entertain the kids, that isn't overly offensive or filled with sort of, dangerous worldviews or a bunch of junk that you don't want your kids seeing, then I think Sonic the Hedgehog can maybe scratch that itch. But hey, let me know if you guys are going to be rushing to the theaters to see this movie, or if the first one kind of left you, wanting nothing to do with this movie, and just waiting for Mario to make his debut and see how they do, this new wave of the console wars. Let me know. I'd love to, talk about this, and if you saw any themes in this movie that maybe I didn't, as far as kind of worldview stuff, we'd love to have that conversation with you. And if you haven't already, I encourage you guys, subscribe to our channel, become a Collider. Got a lot of stuff coming up over this summer, a lot of different movie reviews and live streams. We'd just love to have you be a part of that. Make sure you like this video, but most of all, guys, stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.